everyone, Charlene here. I have a really fun project today that I'm going to be working on. I'm using the In Stitches Bookmarked dies from Honeybee Stamps. This is going to create a gorgeous bookmark that I can use for a gift. And then there are a couple of coordinating sets. I'm going to use one of them. This is the Stitches Bookmarked Love and Light. That's what I'll be using. You can create a sun bookmark or a heart bookmark. And then there is also this In Stitches Bookmark Snowflake. So you get this fun snowflake die. Not using that today though. Like I said, I'm going to use this lovely set here and I'm going to make a heart bookmark. So let's start by cutting out our bookmark pieces. There are two different styles of bookmark you can make with this. You can see there are stitching holes along the bottom edge of this triangle, and on this one there's not. So you can use either of these depending on what style you want. You also can make a full triangle bookmark by cutting out two of the triangles, and then your paper would just slide in between the two triangles. I'm going to be using the larger base piece today, and then either one of the triangles is fine. I'm going to use the one with those holes along the bottom. So I'll start by cutting these two dies out here from a piece of ivory cardstock. All right, I cut that out, and now I'm just going to pop out all the little pieces into a tray so I don't make any mess. If you want the bookmark to be a little bit more heavyweight, you can certainly cut a second one of the triangles to make it a bit thicker. You also could cut these from felt or even leather if your die cutting machine can handle that. So you can see here now how these are going to layer over each other just like this. And I've got the Love and Light set here. As I mentioned, there are a couple of different options. I'll just show you here. This piece creates the sun with the beams going out, and then there's this separate little accent detail that goes over the sun part. I have the heart piece here that I'm going to pull off, and you'll notice that there's no cutting edge around these dies. These are piercing plates. This gives you a lot of different options. You can put it directly over the triangle piece from the base die set that I used, and that's just going to make that impression, that piercing. Or you could completely cut it out from a separate triangle if you wanted to. And there's this fun triangle that comes here. I'm going to cut this out so you can see it cuts a triangle so that you can still see that detail along the edge of the triangle. So this is really fun if you want to have multiple different colors as part of your finished bookmark. I'm not going to do that today. Instead, I'm going to go ahead and take the piercing triangle and I'm going to use it directly on the ivory cardstock. But you could do it on a different color. Either way, it's gorgeous. So I'll go ahead and run this through my die cutting machine now and get that piercing detail. You can see it has created a lot of lovely detail. I can kind of pick it up in the light here. And then I just need to go through and pop out all of those extra little pieces that are cutouts for the stitching. Then next I will grab the heart dies that are part of the set. There's this large heart die and two smaller heart dies. You could cut these out of all the same color or different ones. I'm going to cut the larger heart from blush cardstock and the two smaller ones from white cardstock. Those smaller detail hearts will layer over the stitched areas so that you can stitch through that top rectangle. We have all our basic pieces here. Now the fun part, we can come in and add any decoration that we want to add. I'm going to start by grabbing the base piece here and getting my stamping platform out. I have here the Zelia's English Garden rubber stamp, which is absolutely gorgeous. I've used this a few times before in the past. I'll start here by pulling off that clear backing, putting it in my stamping platform, figuring out how I want to stamp this on here. Then I'll add some low tack tape to the back of the piece. This is going to allow me to bring in my top plate and pick it up easily. Then I can set that aside while I'm inking up my stamp here. I've got some ground espresso Distress Oxide. Distress Oxide stamps beautifully. I think a lot of people kind of forget about stamping with their Distress Oxide. So if you have them, definitely get them out and do some stamping. So I'll lift this up. Look at how beautiful that detail is with the rubber stamp. I'm going to use this gorgeous terracotta variegated embroidery floss. And so I want my pink heart to coordinate a little bit better and go along with that vintage feel. I tested out 2 inks. I tested out aged mahogany on a pink cardstock scrap that I had, and also some fired brick. Now I think the aged mahogany goes very nicely with that terracotta embroidery floss, so that's what I'm going to use. But this is just a friendly tip reminder for you: try out different ink colors on scrap pieces of cardstock before you get started. That can help a lot. So I'm going to work that ink into the bristles of my blending brush, then come around the edges of the heart up and onto the cardstock, leaving the lighter pink in the center. Then when I'm happy with my heart here, I decided to bring just a little bit more of the ink across the center to dull down that pink a little bit. Now you can use as thick or as thin of a piece of embroidery floss as you want to. I usually split mine in half and use 3 strands, but I decided today to go ahead and use the full piece, which is 6 strands here. So I'll thread this through my needle, and then I'll start by lining up my largest heart here so that I can see all of the punched holes going through the pieces and they line up. Bring my needle through the back and then pull it until I have a nice sized tail on the back. You don't want your tail to be too short. You want it to be long enough that you can easily tie a knot later. I'm going to tape it out of my way, and then I'll go over and under all the way around the heart with my embroidery floss. I've made it all the way around. All I'm doing now is I'm going to come back in the opposite direction. So all the way around and then back, going over and under, all the way back around the other direction on the heart. I've made it all the way back around, so now I can clip off the end of my thread here, leaving enough that I can tie a knot. And I use a slip knot, so I just go right over left, left over right. Once I have that tied, I can bring my scissors in and trim off the end of the tails, just leaving a little bit so that way they won't be visible once our bookmark's all finished and put together. So I'm going to repeat that process, exact same thing, using the 2 smaller white hearts. Again, bringing my needle through the back and pulling it all the way through until I have a decent sized tail, taping that tail off to the side out of the way, and then going over and under all the way around the white heart. Once I've gone all the way around, now I can come back in the opposite direction again. And this time I do want to point out, I am going to make sure I go between the threads each time I make a stitch. This will help keep the sides of the heart more uniform. So you can see I'm kind of putting my needle in between the threads and then pushing through. This just gives you a much cleaner finished heart on these small pieces like this. So I finished up, I'll clip off a tail there, and then I can tie these together in a knot. Now I can trim off the excess tails on there, and we're left with a lovely stitched white heart. I'll go ahead and repeat that process for the third heart off camera. So now we have our hearts all finished, and now we can do the edging of the triangle. So on this, you got to note we're going to put stitching along that bottom edge, but we don't have anything to stitch into for the bottom piece. So we're going to start by pulling our thread through that second hole along the bottom, so one hole away from the corner, and then taping the tail out of the way. Then we'll come in and go over and under all the way along the bottom edge. Then once we get to this edge here, all the way at the end, then I'll bring in that base piece that we did our stamping on. I'll layer it over, and for the very next stitch hole, I will go through the two pieces. Now I can just continue going over and under all the way around. And when I get to this final corner here, I'm going to go back in the opposite direction all the way around that top portion of the triangle. And because the embossing thread that I'm using is variegated, it's going to create multiple tones because the color of the thread changes as I go along. I think it's kind of a fun look. If you're just using a solid color, that would look nice as well. It would just be a solid color going all the way around. Something else to try is maybe silver or gold embossing thread. I think that would look really pretty. You also could do a whip stitch, I believe it's called, along the edge if you want to have the accent of the thread going out around the edges of your bookmark. Then once we get all the way down to this corner, you're going to kind of open up your piece to finish up that bottom area. So we'll bring the thread through the top layer and then kind of open it up a little bit so we can see what we're doing and pull the thread back through, and then we'll go over and under all the way back along that bottom edge of the triangle. When you get to this last part here on the corner, you're going to want to bring it through, come back out the back, but when you come back through on this part, you are not going to want to go through both pieces, just through the bottom piece, and then bring your needle out through the middle from in between the two pieces. Now you can just pull your needle all the way through and get that thread all the way through and trim off your tail. I'm going to use my die pick here to help me grab that other tail that we had taped down in there. So I'll just pull that out, easy peasy. Then I can tie my two tails into a knot, just like we did with all of the other ones. And it's going to hide our knot inside of the bookmark so that it's not showing anywhere. I'll trim off these little tails here and then tuck the ends back inside on the bookmark so they're hidden. This part is optional if you're following along and trying to recreate this. I thought it would be fun to bring in some of the aged mahogany up on the edges and just make this a little bit more distressed, a little darker, kind of more moody. So I'm very, very lightly going all the way around the edges. Once I've gone all the way around the edges, I'm going to bring some along the center here too, just to help break apart the two different parts of the bookmark. I'm even bringing a little bit across those white hearts just to knock back the white a little bit and tie everything together. To glam things up a little bit, I'm using a few of the antique gold colored pearl stickers from the Merry Moments pearl sticker set. You can add as few or as many as you want. I wanted my bookmark to have a decent amount of bling, so you can see how pretty that looks with those added pearl stickers here. And I thought I should show you how this bookmark works and how it looks on the page. So you put your bookmark on there just right on the corner, close up your book, and then you can easily find your page again and pull your bookmark off and move on and continue reading. Such a great little gift for friends and family. I hope that you guys picked up some tips and tricks today. Please be sure to like and subscribe, as well as hit that notification bell so that you'll know about future videos here on the Honeybee Stamps YouTube channel. Thank you so much for watching, and have a great day.